Welcome, y'all. Welcome, what's going on to another episode of the Southern Comfort Podcast. Kevin, how we doing, my brother?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
Pretty good, can't complain. Ladies and gentlemen, screwing up the opening, we are your boys of Maroon Bison. I'm Big Rich.
Kevin Harris.
Uh, Beautiful thing about this, right? Like again, folks, you're just joining. Got a text message just this last week about somebody who started listening to the show and she loved it. Kevin and I are two black boys born in ATL, went to historically black colleges. I went to Morehouse.
Howard.
Um, Kev was born in Atlanta, grew up in Birmingham. We have been in politics pretty much our entire adult lives, even still in college, right? It's stuff that we just somehow magically fell into. And so we decided to create and develop this podcast after just our journey throughout campaigns and just witnessing what's going on. And, everybody and their mama got a podcast, right? Like I heard a baby in somebody's womb about to drop a podcast. Um, so yeah, I think what we have here, the Southern Comfort Podcast, is just something nice. It's like a stress reliever for us. Basically, what this is, you guys listen to me and Kevin's phone conversations that we typically had, especially during COVID, right? Like there
Yeah.
wasn't nothing to do, and we was just on the phone every morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
But and what is it? This has been about a decade of collaborating. Because I guess the first time would have been Hillary's
yeah,
campaign in 16, so it's about a decade. And I think it
yeah,
really started then because I would call you every day. We were in different places. Um and we were on the campaign at the same time, but we weren't really we weren't really overlapping in our work
right.
other than we were just on the campaign at the same time. So we would just call and compare notes and had these conversations and
So
I think that's what started it. And we eventually just, a decade later decided to just
he says compare notes. I say we both was bitching. Well, no, I was probably bitching because I was treated like the Negro. You want
but
a Negro in our campaign.
it went that's how it started. 10 years ago, and there's just been a lot of
Yeah,
conversations. And I mean, 16 will be
yeah,
10
yeah.
years because I didn't come on to the general election. So,
What's also interesting though is like we kind of really also crossed paths and just never realized it, right? Like, oh, you was there? Yeah, I was on this side. Yeah, I saw it from this angle, right? Like different vantage points of things, which is crazy.
oh yeah, I'm certain that it had to happen. And it was one of those things that happens in politics all the time. Well, a couple things happen in politics, right? Like, on the one hand, you know people for so long, you forget why you know them or
Uh-huh.
how you even really met, right? Like, we had to sit and think about like how we actually got connected and met each other. And it was Brian Lamar.
Uh,
And then the other thing that happens is you meet people and you're like, how did we never meet before?
right,
Like, how did that
right.
never happen? And so that definitely was a situation with us. So I'm like, I don't know how, because we were doing national politics. And I think it's gotten better now, but at the time I felt like when we were doing it, like, you ain't meet people from the South. People from the
No,
South were not in
no.
those circles. So I'm just like, well, how many other black dudes from the South could it be? And how I ain't never met him.
Or you just never really acknowledged that you were from the South.
Well, I mean, I did. I never didn't. I just, people just didn't know much, about it. Didn't know much about Alabama or Birmingham. People thought I grew up on a farm,
Yeah.
and all this other. I'm like, no, it's a city. And my accent at the time when I was in college, because I was a broadcast major. So, they teach you how to talk without an accent.
You mean
So, like,
code switching?
well, yeah, I mean, because if you're gonna do news, right, like, you can't have an accent and people don't understand what you're saying. So, yeah, they taught us how to talk without accent so that we would be employable. And so people really didn't know that I was from the South necessarily. And then, when I started, my first big national race was like the Obama race. And so, that was in Iowa and all throughout the Midwest and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
Yeah,
people
yeah.
didn't know that I really had this Southern really background unless you knew me. But yeah, so we, finally got connected, did a bunch of races together. And even if we're not formally on a race, we always talk to each other about each other's projects anyway. So,
We also talk about it.
and we talk about each other.
Yeah,
I was just cussing at you before we started,
well, it's
talking shit.
interesting because if people don't, again, we're letting the world in on a glimpse of, right, like, black man conversation, right? Particularly 2 black men that went to HBCUs, right?
Yes.
Like, the people would call us, people would say our schools are like the upper echelon of HBCUs, but we just say our shit's the shit. That's all it is, right? And so, you know, sometimes it's like, well, why you talk to each other like that? Like, what do you mean? This is my brother. Like, you talk to your brother that way? Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yes. Yes.
But nonetheless, right?
Yes.
Speaking of HBCU grads, I want to talk about. We got a couple of things we want to talk about. I think the last episode we're talking about momentum or the momentum for Democrats, right?
Mhm.
Like, we covered Jasmine Crockett with her announcement should be dropping. So we're for full disclosure, we're recording this a day before her announcement is coming through. Um
We don't know what it is
we're
though.
gonna know what it is, right? Like,
Yeah.
we've talked to a couple people and they're speculating. Everybody says, "Oh, she could be doing this and that." We'll put a pin in it. I want to get to one of our main focus, which is a Morehouse brother of mine, who was an admiral who just resigned. Admiral was a Hostley.
Mhm.
Spent decades serving his country with honor. Just resigned because he refused to follow what he believes to be illegal orders from one Donald Trump and Secretary Pete Hegseth,
Mhm.
who is mind you, neither the president nor Hegseth have ever served in the army.
Except did.
He served.
Mhm.
Served lunch. I'm not gonna let
No,
me
he
not let
he
me not
he
let me
yeah,
not.
no, he
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 served. He
served.
served.
Mhm. Mhm.
But he was a TV host basically, and now he's running the Pentagon.
Mhm.
And really, that was probably one of the best leaders we've had who decided to stick around because
Mhm.
he's about the country and protecting the country. Um, but this controversy about following illegal orders,
Mhm.
right? And I'm even going to throw U.S. Senator Mark Kelly in there, who is basically uh, astronaut slash pilot slash rocket
Badass.
scientist slash, right, like,
Yeah,
all around
badass.
badass, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
um, and so it's just like, which one of these things are you going to listen to and trust, right? These gentlemen or Hegseth, right? And it's you mix you mix that with bombing of boats and pardoning of drug dealers, and it's just, again, we're trapped up in this maze, right, of political theater and confusion,
Mhm.
and it's all
Mhm.
at the leadership of Donald Trump.
Well, and this is why everybody thought, right, the second term could potentially be more dangerous, right, and more devastating, because he has the benefit of learning, right, from his first time around, and what he has done, particularly at the Pentagon, is he's made sure to put in, well, into like the Pentagon and the Justice Department, right? Because he felt like that's where he got messed up in the first term, right? The generals kind of put guardrails on him, and then also out of the Department of Justice. And so in those two positions in particular, this second term around, he made sure that he had loyalists in those positions in the leadership who were just going to do what he said. So they're looking at trying to indict Letitia James for the third time, right?
Right, right.
Why? Because Trump just said, I want her investigated and I want her indicted. That's not how the Justice Department is supposed to work, but that's how it works under this term. And so you're seeing the same dynamic play out with the Defense Department. And you have a black general, like you said, who basically just retired early because he saw where things were going, and he didn't want to be involved in issuing illegal orders. And I think rightfully so, he understood that
That was gonna be his ass.
some of the other generals might get protected, but I should not assume that my black butt is going to
Right.
get the same
Right.
level of protection and loyalty from these guys. And it's troubling because we all knew that a second term would create these strains on our institutions and our democratic norms. And you're seeing that in the military ranks right now. And that should be considerably, like, that should be troubling to everyone, right? Like, that's supposed to be one of our most venerable institutions that is void of politics, right? But it is being mobilized against our own people in our cities, right? It is engaged in what most people agree, right, is illegal killings,
Yeah.
right,
Right. Right.
for a drug war that doesn't exist. Like, the majority of the drugs that come into the United States, it does not come through the Caribbean where they're blowing up these boats. The drugs that come into the United States come through Mexico.
Mexico by way of China.
Right. And the drugs that come through the Caribbean actually end up going to Europe. But the Brits, as an example, right, have stopped sharing intelligence with us because they don't want their intelligence used illegal to do illegal killings. And so, I don't know what the ultimate long-term goal is there, but it is a example of the erosions, right, of our institutions. And you're seeing the same thing happen with how they're trying to do gerrymandering and everything else. Everything is under strain right now.
Right. And here it is again, uh he has risen he has risen through the ranks, right? Like, and that is tough to be where he is as
Hmm.
a black man. Not only that, who graduated from a HBCU, right? Like,
But I thought the HBCUs didn't prepare you for the real world. You mean he went to a HBCU and became a whole general?
man, come on.
Mm,
Is he a general or admiral?
I
What's
don't know.
higher?
I
Guess
don't
what?
know.
They
I know
both,
but you know what? He know
you know,
and
and
did it.
he could probably could beat your ass too,
He
right? So,
absolutely could, I'm sure.
I'm thinking of Major Payne. You want to find a different way to take that pain away? But it it says something when you have a high-ranking official
Mhm,
resigning over the legality of orders, right?
mhm, mhm.
Right. Let's not talk. We're not talking about I pulled you over because you weren't wearing your seatbelt or questionable traffic stop. No, player. Right. I'm over my 30, 40-year experience of war, battle, death, strategy, right? Like, I'm resigning over illegal orders about question we're bombing some boats in the Caribbean, some fishermen in the Caribbean over fentanyl,
Right.
right?
And we still ain't produced any of the fentanyl. We did not explore, are there other ways to detain? I mean, it's a boat. Like, pull up on one of our ships on them. Like, why is it
Right,
the first option is to shoot missiles and shoot bombs
right.
at what looks like a little fisherman boat, right? So lots of questions about it. And
I mean, but this is not a normal political disagreement, right?
no, this shouldn't be political at
Right,
all. And that
right,
tells you, like, how weak, right, our institutions and our politics have gotten, is that we don't have agreement on that. Everybody should be in agreement. And in fact, there are clips of Pete Hegseth uh, essentially saying that this
the
type of
opposite.
thing is illegal,
Right.
but then people get appointed to Trump's cabinet and they just kind of change their whole it's almost like they forget themselves and their morals and their integrity. And that is dangerous with this type of administration.
Well, see, we're talking about an administration, right? Where it is what separates a democracy from, an authoritarian regime. And that's essentially it's not essentially, it's what we have here, right? They're throwing the Constitution. They're not even following that as a measurement or rule book, right? It's almost even like the Supreme Court isn't really the Supreme Court. They're just the mob's henchmen doing his dirty work.
The Supreme Court, in this instance, to use your mob analogy, right? Like this is the judge you pay off, right? So
Right.
that they can't get the warrants, right? To search
Right.
your warehouse, right? And the Supreme Court, unfortunately, has become just an arm of the Trump administration. And that's why, I think our maps, right? The Voting Rights Act, all those things are at risk of being gutted, right? Because we don't have the usual reprieve of just saneness that we usually would get from the Supreme Court. That has become politicized, just like the military. And then, and like you said, the Constitution, right? We're not even really following that because now, he's pushing hard to get rid of birthright citizenship, right? Like that's literally it's not like, laws we change all the time, right? If you want to update a law, just change a law because it doesn't fit your priorities. We do that all the time, but we typically don't like ignore and just change the Constitution willy nilly. Birthright citizenship is not like the law, like it's in the Constitution, right? If you're born here, you're American, and they want to change that, right? And gut that. And so everything is up for grabs, right? And that's why we're talking about momentum from Democrats. That's why that momentum is important. And that's why we got to keep it going into 2026 because we have to reinstitute some balance, right, in the power structures that are happening right now in the country because a whole lot of damage can be done. We still got presumably 3 more years to go with this administration.
So now you enters Navy combat pilot, astronaut, someone with actual war experience,
Mm-hmm.
someone who literally flew combat missions and flew into space,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like coming in and just saying, "Hey, there's a problem here." He's trying to provide real oversight to the Department of Defense that often acts first and tries to justify later, right? And he's raising concerns, he's raising the flag, he's raising questions. And now, they're trying to draw this man out and make him an enemy when he's been protecting this country, since birth, basically, right?
Yeah,
Like
Mark Kelly. Yeah.
him and his brother, right? Like
Public servants, his
public,
wife,
his
whole
wife,
family.
right? Like, um, and so when you have decorated individuals questioning what's going on the level of the Constitution, which they are sworn to protect,
Mhm.
and you have the henchmen like Hegseth, and even I'm bullying the Supreme Court into this because they are creating and forming and um, fashioning their own type of weapon, right? Like, so you take the mix of them just bombing first and asking questions later with
Yeah.
Hegseth.
Yeah.
Then you take the Supreme Court and them, basically say that those redistricting maps of Texas are approved, right? That is a different pen as a sword, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And it's creating now a domino effect with this decision that Texas redistricting maps are okay and we can use them. Now we're entering another realm of the Twilight Zone. And what 2026 is probably going to be one of the wildest and probably the most expensive election to date, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Billions of dollars will be spent in advertisement and misinformation, probably on both sides. I'm not,
Oh, totally.
I definitely think right now Democrats are probably going to start creating their own apparatus of misinformation. And why not, right? Like, what I'm saying? You're supposed to fight fire with fire. Like, fuck all the dumb shit. Like,
I hope not.
they
I
are.
hope not, but it poses a interesting question where it gets back to the same debate around the gerrymandering, right? Like, do we just gerrymander in blue states? Um because they're gerrymandering in red states, even though we all agree that that's not the way that these congressional maps should be done. Um, but how can that be your position, right? We're in a different time, right? And so you can't just sit by and abide by rules if the other side doesn't have any rules, right? And so I would certainly hope that we don't resort
Mhm.
to the same kind of misinformation tactics and campaigns and different things like that. I would hope that we just got smarter and tougher in our messaging and more innovative, found some more innovative ways, right, to reach and engage people, and that we continue to be the sort of carry that we positioned ourselves as the keepers, right, of restoring back our norms, right? I still think that that matters, right? We should be the party of democracy, right? It's not the only issue that we should talk about, right? But we should still be the party of democracy, because only in a fair and just democracy do all of the people and the causes that we care about and champion within the party. That's the only way that those people are served, right? We have to have a fair and just democracy, and we have to have robust participation in that democracy, because we should never forget that, yes, we're going through some tough times, right, under this administration, but it's only a majority of the people who showed up to vote, right, that created this administration. The majority of the country never said they wanted any of this. You just had a whole lot of people that didn't bother to even participate. And so I know we want to fight and we got to push and we got to hit back at them, but we shouldn't lose sight of that before we get too in the mud.
Well, so that's where, strategic implications come in, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Democrats have been, should be, and are immediately they're reassessing which districts are now winnable, right? Um, Again, this is a teaching podcast. We try to teach y'all some of the lingo. Last episode, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't the first time we used that. You heard me say D trip, which is D, the letter D, and three C's. So
Mm-hmm.
DCCC. That is a Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the DSCC, which is Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. So whenever you hear us say D trip or DS, that's what we're referring to. I think the D trip has already identified 46 competitive seats nationwide
Mm-hmm.
that they want to go after, and I think with this redistricting in Texas, it may add or subtract to that, right? Um, Candidate recruitment should have been accelerated 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
We have filing deadlines approaching where people need to qualify and say that they're running for a race, but we
Mhm,
need viable challengers, right? The other problem that we're facing is fundraising.
mhm,
You and I
mhm.
know we have candidates who are running statewide, who are running locally, but all across the board, fundraising is an issue that people don't want to give their money. And I think it's rather interesting that people don't want to donate, but they want to win, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of untapped potential, right? Like, a lot of people, well, 2 things, right? In this economy, a lot of people just don't have it to give. Or what they do have to give, they think that it's such a small amount that it's not consequential when they're hearing about billions and billions of dollars that have to be spent to win, but they don't understand a big part of how we get to billions and billions is a lot of people giving 5, 10, $25 regularly. So we got some work to do there, because a lot of people just don't know that that's a way that they can participate. And a lot of people think too that because elections are like in November and they're so far away, why
I
do I
was,
have to give money now? Why do I
and
need
see,
money? I got time. I'll just come
and
back to me. I'll give you some money.
and again, this is what we've talked about time and time again. Therein lies one of the bigger problems. You wait to the last minute to give, and then you're rushing to try to implement or do or put in effect ideas or programs that you had in mind when
Mhm.
we need year-round engagement, right? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
point
Mhm.
blank period, right? Like there are things that we could right now, there are lots of things that we could be doing and setting up real true infrastructure in terms of 2026 and
Mhm.
moving forward. And so one, identifying great candidates, recruiting great candidates is
Mhm.
key, but also recruiting new people for the donor class and a donor base,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That's key. We are continuing to recycle the same people who donate, and they're tired of their money going to losers. And so we need new people to give their money to losers.
Well, and they need to see. I think a lot of those donors need to see that we've learned, right,
Right, right.
and that we're listening. They don't. Nobody wants to put good money after bad strategy, and I think the outcome of the 2025 elections gives us an opportunity to show that that we've learned, right? We've listened. One of the big critiques out of 2024 was we didn't talk enough about affordability. 2025, that's all we talked about. And we were successful, right? We won up and down the ballot. And so that gives us a proof point to where we can go back to some of those donors and say, okay, not only did we listen, we recruited great candidates, they were disciplined, and we got the right message that we need to be pushing to be successful. And I remember on the Obama campaign, part of why they were successful is we did a mix of traditional donors, but we also brought in some new people. We really cultivated Black professionals who had never been asked to give money. We're Democrats, have been Democrats their whole life. We're not asked to give any money, right, until uh, Barack Obama. And that also gets to, again, some of the diversity or the lack of diversity that you see in the people who are giving the money, but also the people who are raising the money. Part of the reason those Black professionals were never asked is because there aren't Black professionals that are on the staffs raising the money to know that, hey, guys, there are Black professionals who have money. You should ask them.
Uh, so y'all, you see me turning my head and moving like Kevin will say shit sometimes, and I have countless notepads just laying around here. And so, I gotta jot that down, or at this age I forget it. But no, you're absolutely right, right? Like,
Hmm.
and it's interesting. Like, I love when you and I do this because we always thread the needle for each other in
Hmm.
terms of putting this fabric together.
Hmm.
And like in this, we talked about, you talked about one thing where I'm gonna hit on is affordability, right?
Hmm.
That it, quote unquote, is the new messaging now, which has always been that it has always been about affordability, right?
Right.
It's just been disguised through different names, right? And so, um, taking that page out the playbook, you know, the Tennessee Seventh, which we talked about last episode, right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
that was a plus 22 district for Trump, right?
Hmm.
And we
Hmm.
say Trump plus 22 because probably outside of a Trump era election, it probably was you know, Republican plus 12 or, 16. But like Trump provides an extra boost of non traditional voters who only care about what Trump has. And so in a plus Trump 22 district, we saw a Democrat be competitive and brought it to what, 8, 9 points, right?
9 points. Yeah.
Closing a 13 gap, but it was primarily fixed on a working class message of feeding kids, fixing roads, funding hospitals,
Hmm.
right? The affordability narrative. And so, showing to the donors like this message works.
Hmm.
Had
Hmm.
we had more money, had we had more time, had we, dot, 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 right? We can shock some races and shock some things if one, we put the right candidate in there
Hmm.
who can appeal to a broader demographic of voters, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Who can either A, suppress the Republican vote for not even just going out and vote, or B, get into flip and then vote for them in the election.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I hope that what also in that analysis, what we also get is that we got to put forward like credible, good candidates, but we got to also change some of the traditional thinking about what an electable candidate looks like. And quite frankly, we never had no Black senators, Black governors, Black presidents if we stuck to what traditionally what people think is electable, right? And we gotta make sure we check that bias, because otherwise we could miss out on some of our best talent, right? Raphael Warnock would not be a senator if we went by the traditional. We're gonna put up a Black pastor who's never been an elected official in this battleground state.
Well,
He had to push himself through, and the only reason they signed off on it and were okay with it, right, was because Georgia wasn't yet quite a focal point. It was burgeoning, and they thought he would excite some people. They did not think he would win. That is why so much of the national energy was for Ossoff. And Warnock was just there to help create some enthusiasm. But then what did Warnock do? He outperformed everybody. We almost missed out on one of our biggest talents, right? Thinking that traditional bull crap. Barack Obama never would have been president.
Well, so
Never.
so well, so Barack, one, I'm gonna push back there a little bit. The question I have is, do you think white people listen to a black pastor?
Do I think that white people listen to a black pastor? Yeah.
And I think Warnock, if this were the 70s, the 80s, even early 90s, Warnock is a perfect candidate, right? You replace Morehouse with a Georgetown, a Harvard, sure, right? But like now, Morehouse is getting the recognition that it deserve. Like all the HBCUs now are starting to get the recognition that we've been deserved, right? Because we produce leaders.
We do, but that gets to, again, the traditional thinking. Well, it's not Harvard, it's not Georgetown, it's not this. I don't know that we can put him up and be successful. So to me, that goes back to my point. Warnock was not hitting anybody's bingo card for what they thought was electable, yet he won his race bigger than the person that they were backing, Ossoff, right? The other Democratic senator that they were expecting to get. And so I think as we think about 2026, right, we have to check that, right? Like Mondani was not that he's not the traditional candidate, right? He doesn't quite hit all the filters, right? The screens, right? The powers that be that select
Right.
these things, the donors,
The
like you
donors.
mentioned, right? Those donors and stuff like that. These are the people that create the screens that result in which candidates get put forward, right? And traditionally, it creates barriers for people of color to break through, and those people of color end up sometimes being like the secret weapon that we didn't know that we had. And so when we think about 2026, we got to also look at that. It wasn't just the candidates that we put forward stuck to electability. Our candidates look like the electorate.
Right. Right. And so I guess now, right, because we have begun to enter the realm of how politics have changed, and I think that, of course, started. I say with Bill Clinton, right? Bill Clinton started the cultural aspect of inviting culture into politics, right? And it started
Arsenio.
Arsenio, right?
He went
Him
on
going on
Arsenio
Arsenio.
Hall.
He
Yeah,
was the first. He was the first president to start using email, right? Like
that's right.
think about that, right? And so you go into
Hmm.
Barack, who started using social media as the tool to
Yeah,
help organize and build. And so now, right, like everybody has the news at their fingertips, right? And you
yes,
get it different ways. You get it through Twitter, you get it through Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, Twitch, Hitch, and whatever, hell, we're having covert meetings through Signal with the fucking Secretary of Defense and his fucking fraternity brothers,
it
right?
ain't,
Like
it ain't covert.
it's not
China, Russia, all of them done
all
hacked
of it.
that damn chat. They all know what happened.
But again, the message is now on affordability. Everybody's talking about it, Republicans,
Hmm.
Democrats. But I find it rather funny that Trump is denying affordability is even a real issue or is even a real topic. While families are struggling, with Christmas coming up, they're struggling with Christmas costs. He's like the ultimate magician, misdirecting 2026 issues and how it would be won or lost on kitchen table economics, not a culture war, right? Like,
Yeah.
so he's trying to paint you away from real issues as a thing, right?
Hmm.
Think about it this
Hmm.
way: families trying to do Christmas this year are talking about how everything costs more, not just gifts, right? We were talking about this not supposed to be where you're celebrating gifts with being grateful and thankful and being around family, but you can't even afford to pay for the dinner, right? Like
Hmm.
heating a house costs more money now, or doing it for gatherings costs more.
Hmm.
Buying the turkey, or for instance, for Christmas, I usually make lasagna, right? Like,
Hmm.
we might have to do turkey lasagna because beef is expensive, right? Like, Mama
Tastes
spaghetti ain't
good with turkey.
well, the way I make it, it tastes damn good. But like Mom spaghetti ain't spaghetti like it used to. Why? Because beef is fucking expensive, right?
Yeah.
So that spaghetti that's supposed to last you a week,
Yeah.
it ain't gonna last you no week, right?
Yeah.
Like, um, it's like joy itself is a tariff, right? Like there's a tariff attached to joy, and people have to choose between presents and groceries. Or, you know what I'm saying? People have to choose how big the smile is on my child's face. How do I explain to my child it's about doing for others now? And, oh, you only want to get, what you need this year, and that's heat and a meal and not really a toy. Even though Johnny's been a good boy.
Well, it's funny because we joke about that too. It's like, what you getting? You getting lights. But you say that kind of jokingly, but you still get the kid a gift, right? But like, no, for some people, it really might just
You
be
getting your medicine?
enjoy this heat in the house, right?
Enjoy
That's
your
Christmas.
prescription.
But it's also the type of thing too that these are the things that really resonate with people and really do create messaging challenges. And it's very hard once things percolate with people in that way, right? They're literally feeling that difference that way. It is very difficult to persuade them of anything else. And that is the challenge that I think Republicans are having right now, because at the same time, the polling and the data has changed to where people feel like, okay, we tried you guys. You've been in power long enough to have done something about this. And I'm not satisfied with the change that I'm seeing. But what I would caution Democrats is Trump hasn't really engaged on this, and to the extent he did, right? You mentioned his comment where he said, affordability is a Democratic hoax." He's not he's not really interested in this, right? But if he gets interested in it and starts to just really kind of try to drive some messaging around it, it could get tighter for us, right? Some of these big numbers, some of the success that we've seen, a big part of that is yes, we did do a lot of things right. We did hit our marks, but the other part of it too is that like the best motivator on the Republican side, Donald Trump, he hasn't really tried to counter us yet. And so if he decides that he's, had enough and he starts to move around the country again and stuff like that, and really starts to try to counter us on this, a lot of those numbers and a lot of those polling, I would expect it to get, tighter. So it's very important that we have good candidates, that we have durable campaigns, we start engaging early, but everybody should expect a lot of this momentum that we're feeling to tighten.
To tighten and really just it'll be the ultimate misdirection politics, right? He's
He's
basically
good
going to
at
be
it.
like, your grocery bill's 30% more, but don't worry about that. Let me tell you about transgender athletes. You know what I'm saying? Like, look over here, these culture wars while I pick your pocket elsewhere, right? Meanwhile, Republicans still haven't released the healthcare plan, you know, uh, where he's trying to distract you from things that could raise serious issues, right? Why is he falling asleep in meetings? That cognitive decline that he is showing, the Epstein files, right? Distracting you from those matter, the leadership ineptness of his administration, right? Like,
Mhm, mhm,
um, you know, the accumulation of his wealth over here, but let me dangle these other problems of made up stuff by the Democrats here, right? Like,
mhm, mhm, mhm.
um, he's trying to build momentum to himself while families can't afford joy and happiness for themselves.
Well, and him, falling asleep in that meeting, he gave us, but we can use that in ads for, and I suspect a lot of folks will, and I'm talking about a lot of folks. Like I'm not gonna make some of those ads. I will be making some ads, that definitely utilize that. But it's a tough conundrum for him, and it's not unlike like a lot of presidents, have been in this situation before. But right now, Trump typically has a pretty good pulse on the coalition, right? Of how to get enough votes and enough support to his win number to enact his agenda. And I think what we're seeing right now is, I think one of the, I've not ever, I can't really remember ever really seeing him struggle this bad. But truthfully, I think a big part of the reason he struggles is because I just think he's not that interested. Like this just isn't, I think that man, he wants a Nobel Peace Prize, man. He's focused on global affairs and global issues and everything else. And he does not want to talk about domestic stuff and affordability and all that other stuff. And I think that's part of the reason why the Republican Party seems so rudderless right now
Yeah,
on those issues,
that's a
is
fair
because
point.
their leader is not really interested in it. Like Trump wants to do other stuff right now, and that's what has his attention.
So how much does a Nobel Peace Prize cost?
Well, I mean, he got FIFA, so he got FIFA to give him a trophy. So I don't know, he's building some momentum. Um, but he's pushing really hard to get one. But you see this happen though with second term presidents, right? They tend to shift their attention to foreign affairs.
Yeah.
And so he's not unique necessarily in that sense. Um, and presidents tend to just, for whatever reason, just be more comfortable a lot of times in foreign affairs and foreign policy. So I think we're kind of seeing that play out here, but I think it could have political consequences for his party. And I think people don't know what to make of the boats blowing up. I think people are like, I'm not really paying a lot of attention to that because I'm worried about I'm worried about groceries. But to the extent they have paid attention to it, they're like, what?
I mean,
We're
it's
doing
simple.
what?
It's simple. If he can get away with that, right? Ain't no telling. I mean, he's gotten away with a lot of shit, right? Like, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's in his second term has pardoned over 1,000 people, right? That's like that's combining uh, Obama's both terms and Bush's both terms, and he's still outnumbering them in just his one term alone.
And I want to, the point I want to make about that too is that like the fact that he did 1,000 pardons isn't in and of itself a bad thing, right? It's who he was pardoning, right?
Right.
So I would do two criticisms. One criticism would be like Trump gets credit for at least exercising that authority. He should get dinged on some of the people he extended that power to. And I would just say some of the other Democrats, right, that we had before, like, why didn't y'all do more? Why didn't y'all do more? Like we've seen different mayors, right? Governors, right? Especially in the South. Randall Woodfin is one. Westmore, Governor of Maryland is another one. Where they just did blanket pardons, right, for people who had these goofy marijuana, right, offenses that was, to help right that wrong, right, had served their time but were still being held back, right? They just did blanket stuff. So I think it's fair to say too, if we're gonna debate, presidential pardons, right? And some people want to debate whether or not we should get rid of that authority altogether because they don't like some of the stuff that Trump is doing. I just feel like before we get to all of that and we give that power back, right? Keep in mind there will be a Democratic president again. And I would like that authority to still be there. And I would like to pressure that president to do more with it instead of just having this knee jerk reaction of like, well, I don't like the people that Trump pardoned, so I just want to get rid of it altogether.
So here is like you say, yeah, there'll be a Democratic president again. Why aren't Republicans thinking like that? Like, I may need to be careful what we're doing now because our time is coming. And when that does, do we want to see what the blowback effect is going to be because of all the things that we're doing?
I think it's because they are better at wielding power than we are, right? Like that's how power works. When you have it, you have to wield it, right? And you have to wield it for two things, for two reasons, right? A, that's the only way you cement anything, right, into law and continue helping your people even when you're not in power anymore. And then B, that's the only way you get people to trust that they should give you power again because they are confident that you can use it, right? Like if you keep pulling a gun and you never pull the trigger, at a certain point, it loses its effect. People get in trouble, they get in danger, and they got to get a gun to somebody. They don't necessarily want to give it to the guy that always just kind of waves it, but never is shown that he'll pull the trigger. If that's what they're looking to be protected, and so Republicans are better in my opinion, at wielding power than we are. And that is a part of the equation, right, for how we build on this momentum that Democrats have and how we ultimately get back into power and get back into some of these states. People have to know that we have a plan, we have an agenda, but most importantly, that we will follow through on it and we won't lose our nerve. And, the pendulum in politics swings back and forth all the time. Nobody stays in power forever, nobody stays out of power forever. That's why when you got the power, you have to cement and lock in as much as you can.
Right.
And
Right.
I always tell people too, this is one of the things I learned from being in the Obama administration, particularly being legislative affairs. If you look at Barack Obama's whole presidency, those whole 8 years, more than half of what he's remembered for, especially domestically, it happened in the first 2 years of his presidency when he was him and he had control of Congress
Yep.
and
Yep.
he locked in as much as he can. That includes the Affordable Care Act, right? We talking about the Affordable Care Act now, right? When did that happen? When he had complete and total power. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be talking about it. And you see how hard it is once you get those laws and those policies on the books, how hard it is to pull them back. That's what you got to do. You got to
Yeah. Yeah.
wield power, right? And so that's why they ain't worried about that. They pushing through their tax cuts and everything else because they understand how the game is played, and Democrats got to wise up.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right there. And again, they're implementing those things with the whole redistricting plan, right? Like,
Uh, d- uh, And it should be troubling to everybody because that is a hard one to undo. You know, that is a difficult one to undo if that goes through. That will take years to try to unpack and push back on, and a lot of people be hurt by it. And it's one of the things too, you and I, we joke, we go back and forth about, Gavin Newsom for president. I like Gavin. I just think him being president is comical, but he deserves credit, particularly on that front, is because he did something that Democrats don't traditionally do. He wielded power and wielded it well and was like, I don't give a damn. I'm doing it.
but again, does his um his charge in doing that, does that put a battery pack in other Democrat leaders?
Hope so.
You know what I'm saying? Like, push forward. What did Debo tell Smokey? Stop being a bitch and come on.
I mean, that's basically
Right?
what
Like,
what Gavin told
Debo.
Maryland.
Listen, again, does our guy Wes Moore, is he gonna pull through? Is he gonna be successful in that, right? Because that determines whether he runs in 2026,
So that's a tough one. I
2028.
I think ultimately it won't happen in Maryland. And part of the reason it won't happen in Maryland, because you only have one Republican seat, the rest of them are Democrats. There's no way to make that district more competitive unless you dilute the power of black voters in Baltimore.
Baltimore. What is it? The Eastern Shore District?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so you ain't going you'd have to draw that thing in such a way, like there's just no way to make it more democratic really without that and have the numbers make sense. And I just don't see that being tenable. That's not a political win for West. That's not and it would create further tensions, right, within the Democrats in the state. So I don't think he's gonna be able to do it, and we'll have to see how much that ends up mattering down the road in a potential presidential race. But we do need other Democrats to try to
Well,
push through somewhere.
it may mean that he needs to divert and create a new um, push for, let's say, reparations or something to kind
Well, he
of.
done vetoed that.
Well, he's fucking up. Like, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, you look at how people are starting to shape things out now. You have Gavin doing what he did in California, right?
Mhm.
You have AOC creating her narrative. getting the notion out there that she may be either a U.S. Senate candidate or even run for president, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So you have Bernie kind of trying to pass the torch over to her.
Mhm.
You have one Cory Booker getting
Mhm.
married, right? Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you and I, we know Senator Booker very well.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, it's again, right? Like him has always been a question about his marital status and why is he not married, and kind of sort of that goes back to the old style of politics, and like you have to be married to get elected to a certain office, and you have to be a family man, and and again, we're entering those realms of it. I mean, it is true, right? Like, you shouldn't be short if you're a candidate, or you shouldn't. It's just certain things, right? And so it raises those questions, and so him marrying a lovely young lady,
Mhm.
um, this past Thanksgiving, right? Like, is another telltale sign that he may be trying to think about throwing his name in the hat eventually. It may not be this cycle, maybe, eight
Mhm.
8 years from now.
Mhm. Mhm.
And now we're starting to see others. Pete Buttigieg is making his rounds again.
Mhm.
You're probably going to start seeing some stuff from the Illinois governor, Pritzker, right? And so going into 2026, people are going to start making their chess move to position themselves to have a day in the news cycle, like Gavin Newsom.
So, like, in everything you just said, you just listed all very, very talented people, right? And I hope they all run, and they probably are. It's gonna be crazy. It's probably like 30 people that's gonna run on the Democratic side. But it goes back to like what we were talking about earlier, which is that, right? Like we shouldn't presuppose or pre-imposition these screens on our talent, right? We should let the field play out. We should hear from people, right? So, Cory Booker, one of the things he's always struggled with is like people start families later
Yeah,
than they used to. People get
yeah,
married later than they
yeah.
used to, right? But it's always been a thing for him. And I think, we think the world of him and his talents, right? But like for a lot of people, he couldn't get past that screen because they just didn't see he wasn't married yet, right? Like that was their thing. And you're missing out on this wonderful, talented public servant because of that. Stacey Abrams went through something similar when she was running for governor. Pete Buttigieg is gay. Pritzker, let's
I
just
think
say he
he's a big
has a,
dude, a
well,
gland problem.
okay. He has a disposition that is more like the typical American than people might want to admit, you know what I mean? But he's damn good at his job, right? And so AOC is young, she's young, she's a
It's
woman, she's
they
Latina. So just don't put these filters on quote unquote electability.
Yeah.
Let the field play out, hear what people have to say, and let our best talent come forward and let's see where it leaves us. And so that's what I hope doesn't happen with all this early kind of jockeying is that people start applying these filters to who's electable and who's not, and, particularly I always say for women, people of color, that's a dangerous game. None of you will ever get through.
Mm. Well, how do you want to end this episode?
I don't know.
I mean, we talked about the magician Trump. We talked about uh, our HBCU brother and his dynamic leadership, and how we need to look to people like him who have morals and values and understand uh, when it's time to step up and show the real leadership, right? Like, I think that's how we end it, right? We are
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah. I
we
mean,
are getting ready to see people enter the realm to see what type of leader they are and what the country needs from them, right? And that's
hmm
being vocal, that's being upfront and honest about what's going on, and that is stepping up to the plate regardless of your position, right? Like, if you see something, you need to call it out. If there's an injustice going on, or there's something that is to the detriment of this country, like you need to stand up for it and not kowtow to someone who actually just cares more about their legacy and being one of few, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, would you tell Donald Trump he's a bitch to his face?
I don't know. I think it depends on like how upset I was or in the moment. But I like to do things that are effective. So like I don't know what is the context? Is that effective? I don't know that that's effective pushback or that's effective anything. This part of the reason what I love so much about Mondani in the Oval Office and how well and eloquently like he handled that situation. He certainly could have said that, but
Could have
is that
grandstand.
necessarily helping the city of New York? No, but I could do it. I'm sure he believes it, but it goes back to one of the things I always tell people. My grandma used to say, "Do you want to be right or do you want to move forward?" It's not always the same thing. And Mondani made a decision in that Oval Office meeting with Trump that it was more important to move forward than to be right. He would have been right to say fascist and all those other things, but that wasn't his mindset. That wasn't his goal. His goal was, how do I move forward? So, whether it's him or your Morehouse brother, who, left his storied military career early, it goes back to one of the things we always said very early in the podcast, which is that like if you start creating these little pockets of resistance, eventually it does bubble up. If everybody just does what they can within their own sphere of influence, it can ultimately drive and create impact to, help the country transition through a difficult time.
Yeah,
And this ain't
yeah.
the first time we done had a difficult time. You sit and talk to some of the black elders, they'll tell you, this ain't, it's crazy, but it ain't unlike some other stuff, and as my mama would say, you live long enough, you see some things. And, I always think about, and we talked about this before, but I always think about too, whenever I start to kind of question, like, how do I go on, or if I could possibly go on, or man, this is a big disappointment. I always think about how it had to feel to be black in America the day after King got assassinated.
Mm.
And if those folks could get up and keep carrying on, which they very clearly did, then certainly nothing I'm seeing today can be that bad.
And on that note, the doors of the church are now open. I ask that you please donate because we need it, baby. We need it, man. No, so everybody's been real. We appreciate y'all on this episode of the Southern Comfort Podcast. I think Kevin and I are gonna try to take it all the way to the 50th episode to end it and
Yes,
close it out, hopefully for the year. And so, definitely appreciate you guys for this journey right along. And like, subscribe, share,
yes,
do all those things that you're supposed to do to help us build our social media currency. Primarily just because we want to get people thinking, right? Like we're doing this just to create conversation, get people thinking. We
and
talked
draw
to
attention to the South and
draw
the
attention to the South.
leadership and the
Yeah.
talent. The South needs to be more of a focal point for the leadership and the direction of this party. And the reason that is important is because when the Democratic Party has the leadership and the direction that it needs, we help a lot of people. And we can't be missing on the job, especially not with the stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
So,
And again, I think that's why you and I are always on the wait list because at the end of the day, we talk a lot of shit, right? But like we are we're protectors, right? We want to look out for people. We want to make sure that those who can't do for themselves, who can't fight for themselves, who just don't know, they have someone in their corner at all steps, right? Whether it's at a local level, whether it's at a national level, ensuring that your days are better, and you're at some point it gets a little bit easier for you,
yeah.
and not just for you, for your generations to come, right? And so,
That's right. I say it all the
um,
time. I don't know if I will be fortunate enough to have a kid, but if I am, if that happens, I don't ever want to get to a point where my kid, they're learning in the history books, they look at some of the stuff that happened and they're like, well, Daddy, where were you?
Where were you?
And then like, I wasn't sitting there just taking it quiet.
Yeah, yeah.
Your daddy
So,
raised a whole lot of hell.
on that note, y'all go out and raise some hell. The good trouble,
Good trouble.
as my guy John Lewis, get into good trouble. Y'all be good. See y'all next
Yes.
week. Peace.
Peace.